All right, good morning, YouTube. How y'all doing today? I haven't been very active on YouTube for a couple of weeks now because I've just kind of I've been going through my own spiritual stuff where I've been, just spending a lot of time in prayer and reading and trying to get myself right. One of the biggest things that I see that pulls me down is just too much interaction with the wrong type of people. And please don't take offense when I say that. But here's the deal, you guys. We're going to talk today about Revelation2. Sorry. And the reason we're going to talk about that is because Hebrew roots and the suburbs of Hebrew roots, we'll call that, whether it be messianic or, messy, whatever. We're going to talk about this because what's happening is these people are losing their first love. A lot of these people who are in Hebrew roots have come out of churches. They know Messiah. Okay, they know the gospel. They know the love of Christ and what he did on the cross for us. That is our first love, you guys. Okay? They know these things, but when they come into Torah, a lot of them come into Torah and it becomes Torah. Before you know it, you're in Judaism. You're no longer even preaching Messiah. The only time you're preaching Messiah is when you can use him to show, see, he kept Torah, he did this, he did that. Okay, those things are fine and good, but let's not forget what Yeshua taught us, to love each other, to love our neighbors, and to be good to each other, and to serve each other, and to serve our communities, and to edify each other, and to build each other up, and all of these wonderful things that also go hand in hand with the Torah. Okay, so I want to talk about Revelation 2, because this type of behavior is what has really just made me put me into a slump, okay, from dealing with certain people who are constantly overwhelming me and boasting about knowledge of useless information. As far as I'm concerned, it's useless information. It doesn't affect my walk with God, and it doesn't affect my salvation. It's useless information as far as I'm concerned. I have more weightier things to worry about and to learn about. Okay, I don't have time for all that other stuff. I'm sorry, I just don't. I'm glad you do, but I don't. But we can also see the fruit of you spending too much time on that useless stuff because you have forgotten your first love. So this verse, I think, is very prevalent for today, or this chapter rather. So I'm going to just read this to you. And by the way, you guys need to start reading the book of Revelation, okay? There is a special blessing attached to anybody who reads this book and guards this book. Okay? A lot of people throw Revelation away because they don't understand it and they can't make any sense of it. No matter. Read the book. There is a special blessing attached to reading this book, okay? Maybe if you're reading it 2-3 times, maybe on the 4th time, Yahweh opens your eyes and you can see it very clearly. You just never know, okay? So just don't stop trying and keep trying to read this book, okay? So one of my favorite topics of Revelation is the 7 churches. I find it extremely interesting, and I do kind of hold to the idea that, spiritually speaking, we are all herded into one of these 7 churches, that our ideologies line up with one of these 7 churches. So the 7 churches are very important for us to study, because if we are encompassing something that Yahweh hates, then we need to get out of that church, and we need to get out of that church mentally. Okay? We need to ascend our ideology to something that Yahweh loves, not something he despises, like Nicolaitanism. So, it's very important that you're reading this stuff. It's very interesting stuff. Okay, so in Revelation 2, it says, "To the messenger of the assembly of Ephesus write, he who is holding the 7 stars in his right hand who is walking in the midst of the 7 golden lampstands, says this: I know your works and your labor and your endurance, and that you are unable to bear evil ones, and have tried those who say they are emissaries and are not, and have found them false. We're going to remember that, because we're going to come back to that, because there's something else going on that I want to line up with this, okay? And you have been bearing up and have endurance, and have labored for my name's sake, and have not become weary. But I hold this against you, that you have left your first love. So remember where you have fallen, okay? And repent and do the first works, or else I shall come to you speedily and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. See, even holy people sometimes have to repent, because we're always doing something wrong. Okay, so all of these people out there saying, oh, you just have to repent and come to the cross and you're good. No, it says right here, even in judgment, you have to repent. Okay? Yet this I have against you, that you hate the work of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. Okay, so let's talk about Nicolaitanism, because we all know this. Nicolaitanism is, your Joel Osteens or your Rick Warrens, where they are the focal point of that church. Okay, nobody else has a say-so in that church. They don't talk to their congregants. They're not allowed to ask their pastor questions while he's teaching and stuff like that. This is a Nicolaitanism system. Okay, almost every single modern day church is built on Nicolaitanism. Okay, now that doesn't mean that you can't have a lead teacher, but that lead teacher needs to also do what they call a midrash afterwards, where you can ask them questions, they can actually answer your questions. The congregation should play a part in the teaching process. Okay, maybe one of your congregants might say something to you that you didn't think of. It happens all the time, because believe it or not, that person up there teaching is just a human after all. Okay, so he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the assemblies. To him who overcomes, I shall give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of paradise of Elohim. Okay, so let's talk about this. He says you've forgotten your first love. That indicates that they have come to his truth, but they came from somewhere else. He says, remember where you have fallen. I think that this church is us who are coming out of the churches and coming into Hebrew roots or Messianic ideology, okay, where we are encompassing the whole Bible with Torah and with Messiah. But what's happening, and I'm not the only one who sees this, this is everywhere. What is happening is people are coming into this movement and they're finding out that they've been lied to all their lives by their churches. And lo and behold, they'll never be lied to again. Their scales have been removed, and they're not going to let anybody lie to them again. And they carry this air about them, okay? And they become completely obsessed with Torah. They forget about loving their neighbor. And now don't get me wrong, these people have a love for truth. They do, in all fashions. Okay, they have this love for truth, and they're going to not be deceived again. But however, they actually are being deceived right now, because what they don't realize is that they've built up this spiritual wall, and they're not loving their neighbor. Okay, they love their neighbor who agrees with them on everything, but they don't have they have no respect for the neighbor who actually disagrees with them on some things, wants to debate with them on some things, and sometimes wants to rebuke them on certain things. Because guess what, guys? I don't care how sincere you are, and I'll quote Jim Staley right now. You can be sincere and be sincerely wrong. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're right. Okay? It doesn't mean that I'm right. But let me tell you something. When your brother, who doesn't even know you, but they know you're a believer, when your brother sees or hears you say something that is so off the cuff that they come back with a rebuke for you, and you not only ignore the rebuke, but block or delete them because they've rebuked you, you're in error. You've just lost your brother because you have an incorrectible spirit. Okay? Now, let's talk about all these people running around saying the Spirit teaches me. The Spirit's my teacher. That's nonsense, and it's a lie, and you know it's a lie because somebody is teaching you. Every single one of you out there who is boasting about how the Spirit is your teacher is watching a teacher. And it could be Michael Lake, or it could be Rob Skiba, or it could be Steve Mutria, or it could be Zach Bauer. It doesn't matter. We are all being taught by somebody. Every single one of us is adhering to one person's doctrine over another. Every single one of us. And do you know why that is? Because certain teachers resonate with certain people. Okay? It's like Steve Berkson always says, it is your job to find your anointed and appointed. Now, is your pastor, leader, teacher, spiritual guide, whatever that world you want to call him, is he actually teaching you, or is he tickling your ears with what you want to hear? Oh yeah, because there's ear ticklers even in Hebrew roots. Let me tell you something. If you're listening to a teacher that you agree with all the time, you're listening to an ear tickling preacher. Okay? You're not listening to somebody who's going to help you grow spiritually, because that comes from rebuke and correction. And if it hadn't been for me getting my butt paddled by one leader or another, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't even be saying what I'm saying today. Let me tell you, I took a lot of correction, and I'm still taking correction. And if you can't take that correction, you are just looking for a teacher that you can mount up who's going to tell you what you want to hear, who's going to teach you what you want to learn about. That's what you're doing. But this verse here is telling us to remember our first love. So if you came out of, Assemblies of God church, okay, you learned about Messiah. Messiah was crammed in your head from the time you stepped in that church. You learned about those things. You may not have learned them right. We can agree on that. But you learned about those things. You learned the basic tenets of Christianity. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. When somebody is in need, you help them. You take care of your communities. Okay? You care about what's happening in the world. These are the tenets of Christianity. Okay? Now you take those and you mix them with the Torah, which broadens the spectrum of what love your neighbor looks like. Okay? So if you do all Christianity without the Torah, you're lost. If you do all Torah without the Christianity, you're lost. You have to have them both. You have to have them both. Otherwise, you're just, I don't even know what to call what you're doing. You know? But I see the fruit of this happening all over this movement. Okay? There are massive divisions within this movement. Okay? And you know, it's not my place. It's really not my place to regather the people of Yahweh. Yahweh says in his Bible over and over again, I will regather my people. I will pull my people from the four corners of the world where I've scattered them. I will do this. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need me. He doesn't need your sister to go to the churches and to street preach to them and beat them over the head with the fact that they're doing it wrong. Yahweh will call his people when he's ready to call his people. Now let's talk about the other hair that's across my butt this morning. And I actually got corrected about this in my own spirit last night, because I shared the story yesterday, and then I came back to the thread this morning and saw the fruit on the thread and got really upset about it, and I went and I took it off my wall and repented for it, because what we have a tendency to do is tear people apart. We have a tendency to slander, to rebuke and slander people who are in high positions of authority, whether or not we think they're a false teacher. We do this under the guise of Deuteronomy 13, which is where we're supposed to test the fruits of the leaders and the teachers. Deuteronomy 13 is for you. Deuteronomy 13 is not for you to go around bashing other people's teacher. Okay? It's for you. Deuteronomy 13 is for your discernment. Okay, something called emunah in Hebrew. That is the absolute faith that Yahweh is in control. Okay? That's what it means in Hebrew. It's faith, but it's more than just faith. It's believing that everything and anything that is happening because Yahweh is either allowing it to happen, or he's letting it happen, or he's making it happen, rather. So you have to have that type of faith, okay? When you have that type of faith, you don't worry about people sitting in Joel Osteen's church. And I'll tell you why. Because when Yahweh is ready for them, he will call them out. I sat in a Joel Osteen church, okay? I sat there in a charismatic church, and my pastor was absolutely in love with Joel Osteen. That was his hero, okay? So everything he was teaching me was what Joel Osteen's church was teaching him. And guess what happened? Yahweh said, yeah, I know you're entertained, but this is not where I want you. And he took me somewhere else. Now, you have to have the same faith that Yahweh is going to do that with the people who are sitting, say, at Saddleback Church or at the Crystal Cathedral or any of these other huge mega churches. Yahweh knows where his people are. He's going to call them out. Okay, because he's in the process of doing that right now. He is in the process of restoring the two kingdoms back to one, and he will do it. It is not our place to do it. Okay? Now, there's all this outcry about Joel Osteen not opening up his church in Texas for refugees. If that's the real case, then yeah, it's pretty disgusting. But here's the thing. And what you're not seeing is that Joel Osteen is showing his true fruit of his spirit, if that's what he's doing. Yahweh will deal with Joel Osteen. It's not my job to deal with Joel Osteen. It is not my job to sin against Joel Osteen because I deem him a false teacher. Yeah, he's a false teacher, so guess what? I'm not going to his church. But you have to understand that those people who are going to his church are there because Yahweh is allowing them to go to that church. If Yahweh finds his people there, he will call them out of that church. It is not our job to slander Joel Osteen. We can think whatever we want about him. But when we start spreading stories and tales about him, then we're at fault too. And we're at risk of sinning. That was the point I was trying to make on this thread. I hope that it got through because, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I made my point and I'm going to unfollow the thread. But the bottom line is, because I saw somebody I know on there, and I'm hoping that she will hear my heart about that, because it is not our job to spread stories or slander about anybody, even false teachers. Yahweh will deal with them in his time. Okay? Be strong, be courageous, worry about you. What is that Steve Berkson always says? Don't worry about the rest of the plane going down. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first. You know, we're so worried about where everybody else is going to end up. Where are you going to end up? You know, if you're out there slandering and pulling people into the mud and tearing down ministries that Yahweh is allowing, you're actually going against the will of Yahweh when you do that. Because that church is still there because he's allowing it to be there. Now you come along and you know a few bits of Torah and think that you know better than Yahweh and you're going to tear Joel Osteen's church apart. You're not going to do anything. You're going to come up against the hand of God and you're going to suffer for it. So think about what you're doing. Think about what you're saying. And I mean, I hope you hear me on this one because it is time for us to stop all of this nonsense. I'm telling you, I feel it in my spirit so heavily right now. I feel it in my spirit. Time is short and we don't have time to be wasting. with this kind of nonsense. Okay? Time is short. Get right with God. And if you're even asking the question of whether or not you're saved, then you need to be saved. And you need to call on the name of the Lord, and you need to start walking just righteously. Okay? Seriously, you guys, get right with God. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have the Torah and the love of Messiah, you ain't going to make it in these next few days. And I don't mean literally the next few days, but the days that are coming. You're not going to make it. Okay? If you are so convinced you are right, that you can't be rebuked or corrected, you're not going to make it. You're just not. You're not allowing anybody to help you grow. You know? The ultimate goal is to be Torah observant and have the fruit of the Spirit. If you're missing any of that stuff, I beg you, look at your life today. If you're missing any of that stuff, call on His name. Ask Him for your attributes so that you can walk righteously in His eyes, okay? Anybody out there beating you up because you believe the earth is a certain shape, that shame on them. Rebuke them and wipe the mud off your shoes and move on. It doesn't matter. And I'm sending a sharp rebuke on that one right now. Okay? It doesn't matter. All that matters is you getting you right. You training your children right. You keeping your family right. Get you right before you start worrying about everybody else. And the chances are, if you're worried about everybody else, you're not right yet. Because you've got way too much time to be worried about what everybody else is doing. Come on, get it together. It's time to pull it together and live for God and serve Him. Period. I can't be any clearer or blunter than that. I love you all. I hope you have a blessed day. Shalom. I hope this video doesn't make you angry, but I do hope that it makes you think. Okay? We will one day stand before our King and be held accountable for every idle word we said. Did we use our words to build up or to tear down? Think about that. Love y'all. Have a good day.